desire. Well, I'm a man on fire.
Hello humans, welcome to the Slackline Quote of the Day broadcast. You are listening to The Boss.
The boss is coming!
That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you
And we are coming at you from Vancouver, Canada. It is a cloudy, crappy, windy, rainy day here, as it tends to be throughout the winter, but we're making our way through it. The coffee's hot, the weed is burning, and we are chatting some quotes, some interesting things we hear. I've got a lot of things that have been ripping around through my mind over the last couple of days. Not really sure where to direct it, actually. So I found a quote today that kind of hit me a little bit. So we'll get to that in a second. But first, Greg, who's our sponsor today, I'll take a look at what my paper says here. Extra black hair dye that is black, specially formulated to mimic the true sorrow you've never known. That is extra black hair dye that is black. If you've never had true sorrow and think you might like to know the feeling, try extra black hair dye that is black. All right, that is our sponsor today, bringing us our quote. Coming at us from a Roman philosopher, politician, poet. They were all that. If you weren't a slave in Rome, then you were a poet, politician, and philosopher. But that is the quote from Seneca. Is to be always fortunate and to pass through life with a soul that has never known sorrow is to be ignorant of one half of nature. That again is from Seneca, a Roman philosopher, poet, teacher, whatever, all those things that all those famous Romans that we all know were. So that quote it sticks out to me. It's something I think about quite a bit because, personally, I come from a very fortunate position in life. Just by being a white person living in Canada, you're already basically excluded from most injustices and sorrows of the world right there. I grew up in relative wealth, healthy, always, did pretty decently in school without a lot of trouble. Kind of just rolled from high school into university and then into a decent job that was relatively, honestly, it was relatively easy and kind of made my way through that for a little while before I kind of got sick of it. And I think one of the things that I got sick of was just the fact that, there was nothing really challenging. There's nothing challenging along the way in my life, especially when you compare it to not even just people around me, but people that, live in different places and have to deal with true injustices like war and hunger and, all that type of brutal things that, numerous things that I can't even mention. So those are things I've never really experienced. And so it's hard to say that anybody that hasn't experienced something like even like death of a family member or something, which I haven't. I've had grandparents pass and people that are close to other people that I know pass, but nothing that has really been really hit me very hard. And so when I think about something like sorrow or true sorrow, I'm kind of left with almost a guilt of never having actually, had much resistance in my life, even in a minor way, like as something I've experienced things like, heartbreak and loss of friends and those types of things, which they are painful. I have experienced a separated family, and all the drama and issues that come along with that, fragmented, relationships that way. But like, as far as true even sorrow, or like sorrow is an interesting word, because I mean, I'm kind of talking more like desperation and rough living conditions, but those don't necessarily align with sorrow. There's not necessarily a correlation there between happiness and financial stability. But I mean, those are the only terms that somebody like me can put it in, because honestly, those are kind of well, it's not the only thing that can really hit me, but I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I've experienced things like heartbreak and family separation, but I wouldn't really say I've experienced like true failure. Of course, like I've made mistakes, and things don't always work out, and just like anybody else. That's not really what I'm getting at. I mean, like, part of me has this feeling that I've never really given myself like 100% effort into anything, and if you don't do that, then I don't think you can experience like the true disappointment of what that failure would have been, nor can you experience the true like elation of success, because neither was really truly like earned. So disappointment in that scenario becomes like, it comes not from failure, but from like the regret of not trying harder. Not that, so like, it's not this true sorrow of like, oh, they didn't like my idea or whatever. It's the sorrow of, why didn't I take that extra step, or work that extra, hours, or whatever, when I could have, and maybe it would have made a difference, those types of things. And the elation from success of something is kind of always bittersweet, because like you can always wonder what would have happened, how would it have gone with a step further, you would have always been, you're always left with this feeling of it not being as good as it could have. And again, if you don't give yourself 100% to it, then you can never just kind of like sit back and go like, yep, well, that was all I could have done, and gave it my best shot or whatever. And like, only if you really do that can you really feel the true kind of pain of not getting something done. And that doesn't necessarily just apply to work. It can apply to anything in your life. If you never give yourself 100% to like a relationship, then you can never really say if you've had failed or successful relationships, depending on what you want from them. If you never actually speak your mind completely about something, then you never know what the truth in somebody's answer is to you. Like, I know, like I said, one of my only kind of sorrows is from heartbreak. But again, like, that heartbreak comes from more that I didn't apply myself better as a companion than it does from not having that person around. Because you live with guilt of not trying hard enough versus guilt of no guilt. You don't have guilt if you did, kind of give everything you had to something again, whether that's relationship or work. You can't have guilt, right? Guilt is kind of it's a leftover feeling of knowing that you did something wrong, or like knowing that you knowingly did something wrong. I think, like, I don't think there's ever really guilt left over from any situation that was a mistake, an honest mistake. Even when people, get really angry at you for a mistake, it's hard to feel guilty for something that you've honestly done by accident. But when you've knowingly done something to hurt somebody, or when you've knowingly not completely applied yourself to something, or when you knowingly let yourself slide into a bad mindset, or you make decisions that at the time you know that they are the wrong ones, and then they do end up causing you pain, or causing other people pain, causing the breakup of a relationship or the failure of a project or something, whatever, that's when guilt happens. And so, you can't necessarily avoid guilt, because sometimes you have to make decisions that are better for yourself. But here I am rambling on about, heartbreak, as it relates to sorrow, because that's my only reference to it. But it's all relative, right? Like, somebody could listen and go like, what the fuck? Like, that's the only sorrow you ever really had is the breakdown of a relationship. Like, that's pretty weak. And like, I kind of agree. And I mean, part of me lives with a little bit of almost like class guilt or fortune guilt, or just kind of a need to not feel safe, in to not just make the safe decisions, because that's kind of what I've been doing, as far as, like I said, going from school to work, and I took a big leap to get away from that. But even within that, there's still mechanisms of taking the safe road, where a stable environment can be provided for relatively low risk, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But I don't know, personally, I guess it's just not something that interests me. And I think that part of that comes from this type of quote, where I kind of lived that life for my whole youth, living fortunate and living without sorrow, because even then my sorrows were, oh, this girl at high school doesn't like me, versus have abusive family or something like that, like, whatever, any number one of unnameable horrible things that a bunch of other children and people grow up with that I didn't have to experience. And so, not that I'm seeking out things like that, but just trying to challenge myself, I guess, versus taking what I would deem to be, an efficient or economical road of providing a stable life and all that type of thing. And because, I'm kind of a firm believer that you don't really change things. You don't really become a force if you just follow that kind of easy way. I mean, it's just I don't know, physics. That's probably wrong, but yeah. And I think it kind of it extrapolates to people that are kind of at the very top. We've had a lot of problems with the royalty of politicians and that type of thing, and people that come from very, very privileged backgrounds. I come from that, and I'm thankful to have parents that treated us like, we had to earn things for ourselves, even when we were kind of growing up and around, a lot of people that were kind of just handed things. And, we were handed a lot of things too. Like, I'm not going to say we weren't, like I said, school and all that stuff, it was paid for by my hardworking parents. And that's something that not everybody gets. And I recognize that. And that's part of my drive to succeed in a way that, honors that in an odd way of just kind of going off in an unknown direction and seeing what happens, I guess. And it also, it plays into people kind of at the higher level, who are like the very, very high level, who, just have lost perspective on what it is to live as like a normal person. And I kind of think that grows, like, as you go up, as you reach these different levels of comfort in your life, you start to kind of apply those comforts to everybody else. And especially if you've grown up in that and haven't really ever known anything different, it can be really easy to think that's just how everybody gets along. And you lose the perspective that some people struggle with a lot of different things. And that's not just financial security. That's, emotional security, personal security, mental security. Like, kind of happens like as you go up, right? Like as you collect more, as your life becomes more into different levels of comfort. All of a sudden you have this, and now you have this, and then your kids have this, and now your kids have this, and now your grandkids have this, and now your grandkids have this, and you are constantly kind of in the middle of the road, but you're not. You've surpassed a lot of people. And it gets perspectives warped, and it grows more warped perspectives when people don't, kind of teach that type of proper perspective to their kids. You end up with, people like President Trump and, many other like megalomaniacs who have grown up with just a warped perspective on what life should be and what they're owed or entitled to, or even what their own flaws are, because nobody's ever told them that they have them. So that I guess that could do it for today. We'll wrap her up here, and we'll bring it back with our sponsor. Thank you very much to Extra Black hair dye that is black, especially formulated to mimic the true sorrow you've never known. If you've never experienced any sort of sadness in your life, try Extra Black hair dye that is black, and it will give you that sadness you've never felt before. That quote again is from Roman philosopher Seneca: "To be always fortunate and to pass through life with a soul that has never known sorrow is to be ignorant of one half of nature." And thank you very much again to the Crooked Spies for lending their tunes to us. Make sure to check out Instagram at the.slack.line, YouTube at the Slackline Podcast, Twitter at Slackline_radio. You've been listening to The Boss.
The boss is coming!
That's a made-up dumb fairy tale name, you.
This is the Slackline quote of the day. Thank you very much for listening, and bye for now.
It's getting so deep, it's over my head. Oh, high tide.